The main thing about Whitchurch, I love the people that live here. I've made so many friends. I've been here 16 years. I've had great neighbours. Worked in several jobs since I've been here, so I've got to know a lot of people. Doing the community gardening, people are always very positive and complimentary. You know, I think it's a very close community. People are there to help you, and I just think that God's got his hand on this town, and I think he's got big plans for this place. Well, I was born with one hand, and I learnt from an early age that life can be quite cruel, especially children, and I loathed school. On the home front, my parents had quite a volatile relationship. My father was a very hard, cold man. He never showed any emotion, no compassion at all. I remember one instance, my mother had been in hospital for 6 weeks with cancer, and I was 5 years old, and my sister was 6. And we hadn't seen her for 6 weeks. And my father came home and he just said, kids, I've got some bad news, you're not going to see your mum again. And he just walked out of the room. There was no hand on the shoulder or anything like that. Anyway, my mum did go on to live for another 12 years. But I think because of her poor health and because of my father's gambling and womanising, she turned to drink for comfort and became an alcoholic. So most of my memories of my mother were, as a child, of her being drunk. I left school at 16 and I wanted to be a motor mechanic, so I went to college to train. And I remember on the first parents' evening, my mother turned up drunk, and I was just the butt of jokes from the lecturers for the next 12 months. My mum passed away a year later, and in some ways it was a bit of a relief not to see her suffering and not to see her drunk anymore. I left college and started looking for an apprenticeship. I had my City and Guilds, but I was just told by employers that, I'm sorry, but mechanics need 2 hands. So I found myself just drifting from job to job, relationship to relationship. I was a bit like a ship with no anchor, really. But 11 years ago, I was working on a tree nursery, and a friend of mine, Sue, asked me if I'd like to come to an Alpha course. I didn't exactly know what it was, but I knew it was something to do with the church. I remember asking Sue, would there be any good-looking women going on it? And she just laughed and said, I'm sorry, but I can't guarantee it. Anyway, I went along, and I was just blown away by the friendliness of the people and the great teaching. But the thing that struck me the most, that these people, they had something that I wanted. They had like an inner peace, an inner joy. And I don't know what it was they had, but I knew that I wanted it. So I continued with the course. And at the end of the course, I went to the Alpha Away Day, where I gave my life to Christ. And I was told then that being a Christian, it could be quite a slow journey. But the very next morning I woke up and something quite strange had happened. I was actually missing my mother, although she'd passed away 30 years ago. And this went on for several days, and I thought, wow, this must be something to do with the Alpha Away Day. Then I remembered the scripture that someone had read on that day. It was Ezekiel 36:26, when the Lord said, I will give you a new heart, I will take away your heart of stone. And that's exactly what had happened. I'd been transformed overnight. And I didn't even realise I was harbouring unforgiveness and bitterness. But all my friends and family said, wow, you're different, you've changed. And I had. I know that I'm very fortunate because I come from a beautiful part of the country, a place called Anglesey in North Wales. I know most people have been there. But whenever I want to go home to see friends or family or neighbours or just vacation, there's 2 bridges I have to cross to go there. One is the Menai Suspension Bridge, quite a famous bridge, and the other one's a later edition, the Britannia Bridge. Now, although in this country, in the UK, there's tens of thousands of beautiful bridges, they're no good to me if I want to go home. And when I think of Jesus, I think of him like that. He's like a bridge of love, because in this country, or in the world, there's many faiths, there's many religions practiced by millions of beautiful people. But the fact remains that Jesus Christ is the only bridge that we can cross to go home. So I definitely think of him as a bridge of love. I realised about 6 years ago that the Lord had given me a special gift. He didn't want me to be a motor mechanic. He actually wanted me to be a gardener. And now I'm self-employed. I've got quite a successful business, and I do about 30 local gardens. And I work in a nursing home 3 mornings a week, and I feel really blessed. And I remember back when I asked my friend if there'd be any good-looking women on the course. Well, there was this really cute girl there called Karen, and she was one of the helpers, and I married her 7 years ago. Jesus, the bridge of love. Lord, You gave us eyes so that we may see the glory of your Son. You created words so that we may speak of the wondrous works he's done. You made the moon and stars that shine a reflection of his face. As angels watched an empty throne, he was lowered by your grace. And so he came to conquer sin and to build a bridge of love, so that we may cross one by one to be with you above.